Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Current History video blog. Today, I'm going to talk about my recent piece on America's 250th anniversary with a focus on how Lincoln defined what the United States was about. And so on July 4th, 2026, the United States turns 250. There will be ceremonies and fireworks. What there probably won't be is an honest answer to the question the anniversary actually raises. Not what the country has accomplished, but what it is, what holds it together, and what it's for. That question has an answer, but right now it's under pressure. In 1838, Abraham Lincoln was 28 years old, an unknown outside Illinois. His Lyceum speech in Springfield about American political institutions has aged remarkably well. His central point was that no foreign power could destroy this republic. All the armies of Europe, Asia, and Africa combined, with all the treasure of the earth in their military chest, with a Bonaparte for a commander, could not by force take a drink from the Ohio or make a trek on the Blue Ridge in a trial of 1,000 years, end quote. The danger, he said, would come from inside. First, a slow erosion of respect for the law, institutions hollowing out from below. Second, a certain kind of ambitious person, talented and restless, who would build when the opportunity was there and tear down when it was not. Finding nothing left to build, Lincoln wrote, they would distinguish themselves by tearing down. The only check on that was a shared civic idea that everyone was measured against. So what was that idea? Let's start with the Constitution. It was widely read in Lincoln's time as a contract between states. On that reading, a state could, in theory, take back what it had surrendered, which is exactly what Southern states claimed when they seceded. Lincoln rejected that. His argument, developed in the Lincoln-Douglas debates, was that you couldn't read the Constitution apart from the Declaration. The claim that all men are created equal and that government derives from the consent of the governed was the founding idea the Constitution existed to protect. Everything else followed. This is the civic religion Lincoln was defending, not Christianity, not shared ancestry, a claim about human equality and what government is for. It works as a national idea because it doesn't exclude anyone in advance. Anyone can hold it. When that framework gets set aside, something has to replace it. One candidate today is Christian nationalism, which holds that the country's legitimacy comes from its Christian heritage. The problem is that a civic foundation has to be available to every citizen. People from other faiths or no faith are still full citizens under the Declaration. Without a shared foundation, what's left is a contest over power. You can see this fracturing at the state level. California sets its own environmental standards, its own immigration enforcement, its own trade relationships. Texas does the same in other areas. Redistricting has become a nationwide partisan battle. The country is functioning less like a union and more like competing regional governments that happen to share a currency. The rhetoric cracks the breakdown. A president in the American tradition governs all citizens. The current posture doesn't bother with that premise. Opponents are not adversaries to be defeated at the ballot box. They are enemies, internal threats, targets for punishment. When a president and his movement cast the opposition as enemies of the country, use the powers of the office to pursue political opponents and govern by division, they create an environment in which people on both sides feel genuinely threatened. People who feel threatened respond, often in ways that are morally indefensible. The assassination attempts of recent years did not come from nowhere. The shock expressed when this happens is not credible from a movement that stoked the fear and anger that created the environment for it, or at least looked the other way. To get biblical for a second, Hosea 8:7 says this perfectly, for they sow the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. The ethno-nationalist and Christian nationalist alternative currents in American politics are different expressions of the idea that legitimacy derives from identity rather than shared principles. Both sit outside the Lincoln tradition. If legitimacy flows from who you are, it cannot also flow from the Declaration of Independence. Those two ideas are incompatible. Ethno-nationalism has no native roots in the American tradition. Its genealogy is European. The aesthetic of the current moment makes that visible. Gold-plated offices, the president's name and likeness on consumer goods, portraits accumulating across federal buildings, the president's face on a passport, the president's signature on the dollar bill. This impulse is a different point of origin than the republic whose first president refused a crown. These movements are not advancing an argument for something better. They are pulling down because pulling down is the activity itself. Lincoln identified the type in 1838. People who finding no just cause to fight for turn against the order they live in simply because struggle is what they know. Now the other side has its own failure to account for. Lincoln ended a war that killed hundreds of thousands and then chose reconciliation over punishment. His second inaugural is among the least vindictive documents ever written by someone who had just won a decisive military victory. Most of the people who voted for Trump or find the nationalist argument persuasive are not ideological true believers. Most felt their concerns were dismissed or treated as ignorant or malicious, watched a political coalition treat their exclusion as a feature, and found themselves drawn to anyone who acknowledged their anger. Treating those people as permanent enemies does not protect the civic tradition. It hands the nationalist argument a talking point that the other side is just another tribe. The Civil War killed over 500,000 Americans. The country reconciled anyway. If that was possible, the current division is not beyond repair. But it requires bringing people back to the shared foundation, not locking the door on them. Lincoln's civic religion is either the country's operating principle or it is not. Either the government's authority derives from the proposition that all people are created equal, or it derives from something else: identity, force, the preferences of whoever controls the government. That is the condition Lincoln identified in 1838 as the precondition for the Republic's end. The 250th anniversary is a reasonable moment to ask whether it can still hold.